There's this one document that basically decides our country's entire future, everything from the roads we drive on to the strength of our military. It's the federal budget. And yeah, it can sound pretty complicated, but really, it's just a story about us, about our priorities, our challenges, and where we're all headed. So let's jump right in. I want to start with just one number, 156%. What in the world is that? Well, according to the Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, that's exactly where our national debt is projected to be heading. So let's try to wrap our heads around what that number actually means. By the year 2055, the CBO is saying our total federal debt will be 1.5 times the size of our entire economy. I mean, that's the value of every single thing our country produces in a whole year. As you can imagine, this kind of trajectory has economists and policymakers watching very, very closely, and it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. Okay, so to really understand what's going on, we've got to get the basics right. Let's break down the core ideas behind our national budget challenge. First off, let's clear up two words that get thrown around all the time: deficit and debt. The deficit, that's just a one-year shortfall. Think of it like this. It's spending more on your credit card in a single month than you actually earned. The debt, on the other hand, is the total. It's the accumulated balance on that credit card from all the past months and years added together. Right, so let's go back to those CBO projections for 2055. The forecast shows us spending about 27% of our entire economic output, but only bringing in around 19% in revenue. That gap, that 7-point-something% gap, that's the annual deficit. And when you run deficits like that, year after year, well, you can start to see how we get to a total national debt of 156% of our economy. So where is all this money going? Well, by 2055, Social Security and major healthcare programs like Medicare are set to eat up over half of all government spending. But here's the part that's really wild. Look at that second bar, net interest on the debt. This means we're projected to spend more money just paying the interest on our debt than on things like national defense, education, and infrastructure combined. That's a huge, huge shift. Okay, so that's the dilemma. The numbers are big, the trends are pretty clear, but does that mean it's hopeless? Not at all. There are absolutely potential solutions on the table, which brings us to this really fascinating project from the Brookings Institution. What's so cool about this approach is that it wasn't about finding some single magic bullet solution. Instead, Brookings created what they call a policy menu. They asked experts from all across the political map to come up with practical, evidence-based ideas. And the goal wasn't just to slash the deficit, but to find solutions that could actually help the whole economy too. Now, on the revenue side, that's the money coming in, the ideas are pretty big. For instance, a 5% value added tax, or VAT. It's basically a national sales tax, which is really common in a lot of other countries. That alone could cut the deficit by $1.6 trillion over 10 years. Other ideas, like limiting some of those popular tax deductions we all know, could also have a massive impact. We're not talking about small tweaks here. These are major structural changes. Then, on the spending side, the focus is on the biggest chunks of the budget. You see proposals ranging from completely restructuring our military forces and how we buy equipment to changing the way Medicare pays for healthcare. These ideas could save hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And the takeaway here is pretty clear. There are no easy choices. Everything has to be on the table for discussion. And the last category here is all about making government work smarter. We're talking about ideas like funding our transportation system with user fees, so the people who actually use the roads and bridges help pay for them, or getting rid of specific subsidies for things like fossil fuels. These are often a bit smaller in scale, but believe me, they add up, and they're all about creating more efficiency. So this menu of options clearly shows that solutions do exist, but let's be real, these are tough choices, politically speaking. No politician wakes up excited to raise taxes or cut programs that people like. And that's why these massive decisions don't just happen in a vacuum. They take political will. And that right there is where the most important part of this whole story comes in: you. So how do you actually make your voice heard on something this big? Well, the American Friends Service Committee has this fantastic guide. And the main idea is really simple. You don't have to be a policy expert. You just have to be a concerned citizen. It really boils down to 4 steps. First, do your homework. Second, remind them you're a voter from their district. Third, make a very clear, specific request. And finally, and this is key, always follow up. Their guide also has some brilliant, really practical tips. The name of the game is to keep it short and connect these huge, abstract budget numbers to what's happening in your local community. Be polite, and hey, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Honestly, that's just a great excuse to follow up later and keep the conversation going. But my absolute favorite piece of advice from their guide is this powerful reminder. Be respectful, but not starstruck. These people work for you. That really gets to the very heart of how our democracy is supposed to work, doesn't it? Okay, so let's bring this all home. We've got a pretty clear picture of the fiscal challenge ahead of us. We've looked at a whole menu of possible solutions, and we even have a roadmap for how you can get involved. At the end of the day, the federal budget is so much more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is a moral document. It is the most powerful and concrete statement we make as a nation about what we truly value and what kind of future we really want to build. The choices we all make on these issues are going to shape our country for generations to come. So that really leaves us with just one final question. This budget is a reflection of our national priorities. What do you want yours to be?